Hey everybody, Eric Songer here with you for the latest edition of Second Floor Therapy. It's our weekly podcast here in the summer that I'm doing in place of our weekly What's Happening in the Chaska Middle School West Band Department each week, since we don't have any school in the summer. And so, and I've also been doing another podcast I wanted to tell you really quickly about that you can check out that's going to be on iTunes starting this week. It's called The Hits Don't Stop, and it's basically me counting down the top 40 songs from a week in the 80s or 90s on a certain, like this week, but in a year in the 80s or 90s. And I talk a little bit about the different artists and different songs that were making popular history back then, and then what those artists are doing now. So you can check that out. And that's why I didn't have a podcast this past week, because I was doing one of those. So you can check that out as I flash back to June 1988 and count down the top 40 songs from the last week in June. So, but otherwise this summer I'm doing these Second Floor Therapy podcasts, and Second Floor Therapy, again, is something that started about 4 years ago with a couple of my students, and they would come up here during block advisory and talk about what was happening in their lives, and we would just take time to talk about grades or issues at home or issues with their friends. And it just struck me that that part of my job is to help students, not just in music, but in just what's going on in their lives, especially in middle school. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about reputation, and also a little bit about character. And I have this great quote from Abraham Lincoln that goes, "Character is like a tree, and reputation is like a shadow. The shadow is what we think of it. The tree is the real thing." So character is who we are. It's what our main values are, what we believe in. Reputation is what people see of that character. It's basically how we live it out. Are we walking the walk, so to speak? And another one of my quotes I want to give you is, "A single lie destroys a whole reputation of integrity." So, and I see this all the time in middle school, and actually in my adult life too. Somebody who has a lot of character, and they make a bad decision, and it can totally put in reverse all the good that you've done just because you made a bad decision on something, and negatively impacted a lot of people. So as far as from a middle school standpoint, sometimes kids will ask me, for a pass. I write a lot of passes. Kids are up here a lot before school, at lunch, after class, sometimes with, things they need to know for class, but other times because they just want to sit and talk. And I'll write a pass, and I'll put a time on it. Sometimes kids are like, "Oh, I hope you wrote the right time on here, because my teacher will get really, upset if I don't come on the right time." And, a lot of these kids are great kids. I'm like, you know what? You don't really need to worry about it. You are a trusted student. You have built a good reputation. You're going to be fine. And when I do have a kid that maybe doesn't have a great reputation, yeah, I'm going to make sure I have that right time on there, because I know that teacher's going to look at it. Because I'm the same way. There are some kids that walk in the room, I don't have to look at their pass. I know it's legit. I know they got here in time, and they didn't blow off my class. So good reputations can buy you really simple things like that. Turning in assignments is another thing. Students who turn in assignments on a regular basis, if you miss one after you're just always turning stuff in on time, you're probably going to catch a little bit more of a break. And then the same is true for kids who don't turn in their stuff and then maybe have a legitimate reason for why they didn't turn something in. It's going to be a lot harder to believe because you've built up a negative reputation. How hard you work. Again, kind of the same thing. Some students just work really hard at everything they do, and you've built up a great reputation because I know you're going to work hard on that stuff. And those kids that work hard are going to get more opportunities, and they're going to be the ones who get to do the really cool things where I might say, hey, I need to have this done. And I pick those kids because they are the ones that work the hardest. It doesn't mean I don't like the other kids. It's just that you have that reputation. I know I can count on you, kind of thing. Behavior in class is another thing too. And, sometimes, something will be going wrong in a certain section of the room, and I don't even have to look because I know who it is. And I've actually had that every now and then, that rare occasion where I'll say, hey, so-and-so, stop screwing around. And it wasn't that person. It was actually somebody else in that area of the room. And it's like, oh my goodness. And then that kid that I accused of doing something wrong is like, Mr. Songer, that's terrible. How could you accuse me? Well, I accused you because usually when there's something going on or wrong over there, it's you. You're the one who's messing around and not on task. And so again, it's that reputation thing. So if you didn't screw around all the time, I probably wouldn't jump to that conclusion. Who you hang out with is huge. Kids who hang out, I always say, I can usually, if I didn't know you, but I knew your five best friends, I pretty much could tell you a lot about yourself just based on who you pick as your friends. So choosing good friends is really important in building not only your reputation, because like I said, reputation is what other people think of it, but your character. You tend to become who you hang out with. So if you're hanging out with people with high character, with great values, great morals, you are going to become a person, or at least have a much greater chance of becoming a person of very high character. And along with that, how you treat others. You know, some people are so kind all the time. And once again, you build up that reputation of being that person who's always looking out for others, who's always so kind. Once again, you're going to be the one who gets opportunities. You're going to be the one, when I'm making a decision on, I got four kids to choose from to do this really cool thing. And it's tight. You all have the same ability. You all have the same work ethic. I might look at the kindness factor. And that's something that can put you over the top because we all want to be around kind people because we love kind people. It makes everyone feel better when we're around kind people. You're the people that spread the love more than anybody else. So, another thing I notice sometimes too, though, is that some people in middle school can be really kind to the people they want to be kind to, and then real jerks to other people. And I even notice this sometimes kids with teachers. I mean, you see it all the time with kids with other kids. They're really nice to their friends, and then they can be real jerks to some other people. But sometimes I notice kids who are really nice to their teachers, and they almost try to pull the wool over our eyes. Like they always do what they're supposed to do, and then when they're not around us, they're just doing some really nasty stuff to other people, or they're doing things that are very inappropriate and not building up a good reputation. And I notice that stuff. A lot of teachers notice that stuff. Adults notice that stuff, and kids definitely notice that stuff. They notice that more than I do in most cases. So. I think one thing to remember though too is that in middle school you're all young, your brains are still developing. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things that are some of these things I was just describing. You're gonna make mistakes that are going to lead towards not building your reputation. And a lot of times we know that as teachers, we know that okay. You didn't intend to do this. This was just a bad decision. And if you look at that as a learning experience, it's probably not going to be held against you, especially if you don't become a repeat offender. The problem is the people who continue to do it and don't learn from your mistakes. And adults are the same way. Even though our brains are fully developed for the most part, you have to learn from your failures and learn from your bad decisions and try not to repeat those. But then the problem is there's some people who are in middle school that it's not an unintentional, mistake. They intentionally make that mistake and try to play it off as being unintentional. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I did that? Really? And, you can only play that card so many times where it's like, you know what? You're playing dumb here. Or maybe you really don't get it and we need to work on getting it. So that's a big thing too. So I'm a big believer in second chances and third chances at this age, but you got to be working on it. You got to be working on getting better. So, another thing, a couple other things I want to bring up before I end this podcast is social media. Social media is a big part of our culture, and I always say adults have no right to talk to kids about how to use social media because I watch adults abuse social media all the time, especially when it comes to politics and religion, and kids abuse it all the time too. And your reputation in this day and age is built on social media. So make sure you keep it positive. Make sure that you know everyone who is following you and everyone that your stuff is going out to, and that you post stuff that's not going to hurt anybody. And just make sure that you're not doing anything inappropriate. So that's a big thing on social media. And another thing too, I think kids get really upset about when it comes to reputation is dress, how they dress. And I always say schools is your professional part of your day. You should come to school in a professional way. Now, I'm not saying you have to wear a suit and tie and girls have to wear a dress, but you got to come to school dressed in a professional way. And when you don't come to school in a professional way, that affects how we look at you. You can't come to school breaking dress code. That's just a plain and simple thing. Now, if we want to get into a discussion of what dress code should be and all that, that's a discussion for another podcast. But I think it's important to come to school in an appropriate fashion, so you're ready to learn. And ramifications. I think sometimes kids get really bent out of shape when they feel like they're being picked on, or they're being singled out, or we think that teachers hate them, or even kids. I think kids think that too sometimes. But I think sometimes if you have developed a bad reputation and you are struggling in building a strong character, you're going to be feeling singled out, and you're going to have some ramifications for your choices and your behavior, and you are not going to get the opportunities other people do, not because you don't have the talent. It's because of your decision making and your inappropriateness and just not being positive or treating others kindly. So reputation, it's huge. It's a big part of what we do. And again, a lot of times at school, it's grades, 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 test scores, test scores, test scores, test scores. But it's so much more than that. Reputation and character matter. So it's my goal for all of you to give that some thought this week and figure out a way that you can make your character better, and how you can be more kind, and how you can affect people more positively, and how you can develop a really great reputation, because you're the ones who are going to get those opportunities. You're the ones who are going to get the scholarships. You're going to get the jobs. You're going to make the clubs, and make the teams, and make the groups, and have the good friends, and get more honors, and just have more success in general, and just live a more joyful life. So guard your reputation closely. Build your character. This has been Second Floor Therapy. It's Eric Songer coming live from my office today. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back again next week. Have a good one.